Welcome to HackersFriend. This is third part of a step-by-step guide to learning full stack development from scratch. In first part, we talked about code editors, Git basic, and front-end stuffs. In second part, we talked about intermediate level front-end skills like responsive design, JavaScript frameworks, and build tools. Now, in this part, we'll talk about backend stuffs like databases, servers, site programming, and other essential things like FTP and server types. But before I start video, if you are new to HackersFriend, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We have tons of videos coming on career guidelines like this one, and tricky coding problems, startups, new innovations, developer lifestyle, and a lot. With that said, let's begin third part and final part of our journey to becoming a full stack developer. Speaking of backend programming comes first. And for programming, we have huge list of programming languages. I have listed here some best ones and that are widely used. Most of them have been around for a quite while. Some even existed before the internet. This can make it difficult to choose which language to start out with. To narrow down your choices, I would recommend applying these three principles to your decision. First, choose the language that is learnable. It should have a reasonable learning curve. It should be well documented and it has to have a good online support system. Second, it should be relevant to your eventual career goals. Third, it should be enjoyable. Learning web development is already hard enough. There is no point in forcing yourself to learn a language that you really don't like. One important thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to learn every language. In fact, if you are a beginner, I would strongly recommend that you should focus on one language first. All programming languages share some common principles. For example, you can write a for loop in JavaScript, PHP, C#, and Python or Ruby also. We have a course called Introduction to Programming that will introduce you to all the foundations of programming. And now, once you have picked up the fundamental principle of programming in your first language, it will be easier to transfer those concepts into other languages. I hope this takes off a little bit of pressure from choosing your first backend language to learn. Java is a stable language that is very widely used and has been around a long time. Many big tech companies like Java in their websites, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Amazon, and Twitter, and all other uses Java inside their company and their websites also. One reason for this is that Java is fast and can scale up to handle large websites. It is also consistent language that allows for easier maintenance for long-term projects. Twitter was originally built with Ruby on Rails, but in 2015 they needed to be able to support their huge growth, so they switched to Scala, a language that runs on Java Virtual Machine. Now C# was created by Microsoft to be a competitor to Java. You can see that C picked on Stack Overflow trends in 2009 and has been on decline ever since. But I wouldn't count C# out just yet. It is powerful object-oriented programming language. Then JavaScript has been the most commonly used language reported by Stack Overflow used for the past 5 years. A lot of this has to do with Node.js. Node.js, self-described as a JavaScript runtime, is basically JavaScript that runs on the backend. It was originally meant to serve as a more efficient alternative to the Apache HTTP server. Since its release in 2009, Node.js has steadily increased in usage due to its fast and lightweight nature. Node.js developers often use the Express framework when building a web app. Express.js is a minimalist web framework for Node.js. By using Node and Express on the backend and Angular or React on the front end, this means that you can be a full stack developer. This stack or combination of technologies is very popular at the moment, especially with startups. Python come onto since 1991 and is a frequent first language for many programming students. Due to its readability and use of English keywords, it's generally considered as an easy language to learn. Python's popularity has soared in recent years. Data science, machine learning, and academic research are largely the reason for this fast growth. If you are curious about data science or machine learning, Python may be a very good bet for you, as these fields are likely to expand in coming futures. Then Ruby was first released in 1995. It has started getting a lot of attention in the early 2000s, mm, when the first startup Basecamp invented the framework Ruby on Rails. Combined with Ruby's beginner-friendly syntax and readability, Rails made building web apps very quick and easy. Ruby on Rails grew in popularity and became the framework of choice of startups. CodePen.io, GitHub, and Shopify always use Ruby on Rails. However, Ruby was never one of the heavy hitters. In addition, Ruby didn't scale very well, leading to those startups eventually switching to other languages when they get really big. It may not be topping the ranks, but Ruby could still be a good choice for your first language to learn. If you are interested in a startup world or geographic area that has a lot of Ruby on Rails jobs, you should consider learning Ruby and Ruby on Rails. And PHP is a language that a lot of people love to hate. However, despite of number of questions like if PHP is dead, the fact that remains is PHP is the most widely used backend language today. Content management system, that is CMS, are major reasons for large market share of PHP. The top three CMS, WordPress, Joomla, and Drupal, all are built with PHP. WordPress itself has the lion's share of CMS market, making it 29.5% of all websites. If you are working with it, WordPress development may be a good area of focus for customizing websites and building plugins or themes. In addition to content management systems, PHP has some frameworks that make development easier and quicker. Laravel, a framework that came out in 2011, is currently the most popular one. Tutorials from where you can learn these languages will be given on article page of this video. Now, databases can seem intimidating if you are not familiar with them. However, if you think about it, you have probably worked with and used data in your own life at some point. If you have ever used Microsoft Excel to organize data or created a chart or track your goal, then you have done a similar function that databases do. So the question is, what do you need to learn to use databases? Well, fortunately, you don't need to learn a ton of different languages. The main database language is SQL, pronounced as SQL and written as SQL. SQL, a structured query language, was created in the 1970s by IBM and is used in relational databases. The relational model is a way of structuring data into rows and columns. Think like an Excel spreadsheet. Each column is designated for a certain kind of data, and it may require that the data is formatted correctly. And each row or record contains a unique ID or key in addition to the column of field values. The records are then stored in multiple collections called tables, and a collection of tables, among other things, makes up the entire database schema or structure. The main type of SQL database systems are MySQL. This is used for PHP and open source applications. Then Microsoft SQL Server. These are generally used for .NET applications, and PostgreSQL. PostgreSQL is the most available open source database, and we also have enterprise level SQL database called Oracle SQL Star. Then we have NoSQL. Even though SQL is the dominant type of database, there is another type called NoSQL. As the name implies, NoSQL databases are in some way opposite of traditional SQL ones. NoSQL is not relational and doesn't enforce the same type of structure that SQL does. Instead, you can store any kind of data in a freer, more flexible type of system. This creates much faster processes and is much better at scaling up for large, complex applications. The downside is that you sacrifice data consistency. NoSQL arose in popularity in the 20s due to large tech companies like Facebook and Amazon needing a fast way to manipulate and store data. And when talking about NoSQL databases, MongoDB is the commonly used NoSQL system. The other two types are Cassandra, Elasticsearch, and Couchbase. You may run across discussions on whether NoSQL is replacing SQL or which one is better. The truth is, both types of databases have their strengths and weaknesses. Likely anything else, the right choice will change depending on the project and the job. Personally, I would recommend learning the basic of both SQL and NoSQL. Links to tutorials for these databases will be given on article page of this video. As we mentioned at the beginning, servers are simply computers that stores website files and other resources like databases. In order to have a website be accessible publicly on the internet, it need to be installed on a server. There are some of the things that you will have to work in order to create a live website. First, a domain and SSL certificate. Domain names are the addresses of the websites like google.com, wikipedia.org, or hackersfriend.com. In order to get one, you will have to choose one that is available. Then purchase it from domain registrar like Namecheap or Google Domains or GoDaddy, wherever you want to, you can buy them. These companies register the domains with the ICANN. ICANN stands for Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. ICANN is a centralized organization that oversees and manages the DNS, that is Domain Name System, and IP, that is Internet Protocol areas of the global internet. In addition to the domain name, you should also get an SSL certificate for your domain. SSL will encrypt the traffic on your website, which will help protect it from cyber attacks. Once you have your domain name to awesomeexponentialsamazingwebsite.com, you will need to purchase server space. There are few different levels of hosting plans. The first one is shared servers, and this is the cheapest option. Like it sounds, you share your server space with other websites. Upside is the affordability, and downside is slower speeds and possible downtime if you exceed your usage for the month. Then cloud servers. Cloud hosting is relatively new option. It consists of a systems of large number of physical servers whose resources are all shared. Each individual tenant is then given a virtual server that pulls resources from the collective pool. This setup allows more flexibility for bandwidth and can scale up very quickly. And we have VPS, that is virtual private servers. VPS are similar to cloud hosting in that each tenant has their own virtual server and all tenants share one physical server. It's better than shared hosting because you are allocated your own slice of the server resources. This option is a bit more expensive. And finally, dedicated servers. These servers give you one complete physical server all to yourself. As you might imagine, this option is the most powerful but also the most expensive. They often also are managed servers, meaning the company servers will run, maintain, and do the tasks for you. Once you have your domain name and server space, you will have to set up your site on the server. This involves redirecting your domain name to your server's unique IP address, setting up your website files and databases if necessary, and other configurations is very step by step thing, and we are going to talk about that now. So how much work do you have to do will depend on type of server plans you purchase from your web host. The simplest shared plans often come with one-click features that will actually install WordPress, Drupal, or other sites for you. Other servers may require you to set up everything manually. You might be wondering how you will get your files from your own computer up to the servers. You can accomplish this by using a protocol, which is basically a method of transporting files or other data from your PC to a server. The most simple way is by using a protocol called FTP, File Transfer Protocol. However, it is not recommended to use FTP anymore because it is not secure, that is encrypted. Nowadays, most people use more secure protocol, FTPS, FTP over SSL, or SFTP, Secure Shell FTP. To get FTP or SFTP working, you need to create an account on your server. You will then connect to the server using IP address of the server and the username and password login for authentication. In order to transfer files over FTP or SFTP, you can use programs like FileZilla or CyberDuck. These have a GUI, that is graphical user interface, that makes it relatively easy to upload and download files from your PC to your server. So that was third and last part of our journey. I hope you must have learned something and have a basic roadmap in how things stack up together and work. So you must have learned how you can become a full stack developer.